had the right guy. I have had, probably many of you know this, a few health problems in the last few whiles, and I've survived 32 months of the finest medical care in South Central Montana, meaning I'm fucking indestructible. The last surgeries I had were on my eyes, and I cannot see well enough to read. My wife, Christine, is going to read some selections, and then I'll talk about them. She's first going to read from Coyote Wind, which was the first of the Du Pré novels. And writers, I don't know, they're all different. I had this little niggling thing in the back of my mind about a story about a guy who discovers a murder that's decades old. And then he finds out it's his father that did it. And his father's dead too. And that was where this started, just that little niggling thought back there. The books, I had several purposes for. One of them was that the Métis are the largest unknown ethnic group in North America. There may be as many as 30 million of them. No one really knows. They're the children of the fur trade, and no one was really telling much about their story. And one of the wonderful things about mysteries and genre fiction is that you can write a mystery and address racism, land conflicts, all this stuff. And it's, my editor at St. Martin's for many, many years is now the editor-in-chief, he said, yeah, I publish these because they're good novels with a body in them. But the body doesn't matter. So if my wife would come up and read Coyote Wind, then I'll talk about that. Christine?
So, is this, yes, you have to pretend that I'm a foot taller and that my voice is a full octave lower. This is the first chapter of Coyote Wind. Du Pré stirred in his sleep. His eyes fluttered, opened. He looked at the ceiling. He squinted, raised his head, glanced toward the rising light in the east, out the window of Madeleine's bedroom. Little spikes of frost reached out from the corners of the wavy old glass. A pebble rattled against the window. Du Pré decided it was not a dream. He slipped from the bed. A warm breath of air, thick with the scent of their bodies, rose from the bed. Madeleine's lips bubbled softly. It was as close as she came to snoring. Du Pré looked out toward the street, saw a crooked shadow on the short white picket fence. White hair askelter as a forkful of hay. Old Bennettsy, the fool, the drunken old breed, a singer, once a dancer, old enough to have been most anything outside of town. Shit, Du Pré whispered, annoyed at coming out of warm sleep for this. It passed. The old man always had a reason for bothering Du Pré, even if it sometimes took Du Pré years to see it. Bennettsy. Du Pré could see him long, long ago, dancing in the deserts, his head one day smiling from a platter, while the king's wife swirled in silks and scents. Goddamn loony prophets anyway. Du Pré? Madeleine, now up on an elbow, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Bennettsy, whispered Du Pré. I must go out, see what he wants. Take him a glass of wine, said Madeleine. Don't tease him. Du Pré shrugged into his clothes, pulled on his boots. One leather mule-ear pull came off with a final chuckling rip. His heel slid down. He walked to the stairs and placed his feet carefully going down. The resinous yellow pine steps creaked 5 times before his boot touched the worn woolen carpet at the bottom. He went to the kitchen, took a jug of cheap white wine from the icebox, poured a big glass full, lit a cigarette, went outside. The old man was shivering, leaned up against the Russian olive tree, his bright old eyes brilliant black in his brown creased face. Bennetsi nodded, took the wine, and gulped it down. Du Pré waited, respecting the old man. He had been a good friend of Du Pré's grandparents, long dead now. Plastic flowers on their graves, dust ricking in the petals. Du Pré washed them with holy water on saints' days that had been dear to them. "I dreamed of a coyote last night," said Bennetsi. "He went up a draw, sat and howled by some people's bones." Du Pré nodded. Bennetsi's damned riddles. He wished the old fart would come to the point, which was probably $5. "So I just give him the $5 and go back to bed?" No, the old man was not just a pest. "Then you come down and sat down on your heels and looked, the old man went on, his slurred coyote French. "But you never saw till the coyote come back and scratch the earth." Now my days got skeletons in them, thought Du Pré. But if the old man go to the police, they throw him in the jail for drunk. Me, I look at burn marks on a cow ass from my part of living. It's cold out here. Bennetsi cleared his throat, waved the empty glass, and looked at Du Pré hopefully. "You have another drink, you go to sleep," said Du Pré. "Madeline don't mind," said Bennetsi. "She's a saint. You could learn from her." Du Pré snorted, shook his head, went back into the house, and got the old man another belt. Someday I find him dead in the frozen mud, where he pissed his pants and passed out and stuck there. But for now, he's happy. He heard Madeline on the stairs. She came into the kitchen, her wool robe clutched tight around her against the cold. "He can sleep in the shed," Madeline said. "You take him the old sleeping bag in the hall there. Also, tell him good morning, and when he wakes up, I will make him eat something." Du Pré smiled. Madeline, she would feed all the earth, soothe all its pains and hungers. She was as simple and straightforward and generous as the sunlight. "And she knows what's bothering me before I do," Du Pré thought. He smiled at his luck. Du Pré opened the door and pushed the storm door away with his foot, scooped up the sleeping bag. A slop of wine drooled down his hand. He smelled the alcohol. The old man sniffed the wine happily, drank it in a single long draught. "Madeline says you got to eat, you wake up," said Du Pré. "I do what Madeline says," said Bennetsi, taking the sleeping bag and walking off toward the shed. There was an old army cot in it on the duckboards. Flower pots and bags of fertilizer, garden tools on nails. Sanctuary. Du Pré watched him go, smiled, went back in the house.
Well, this was the first of what has turned into 16. But I wrote this in 4 days. In case you were wondering if I have bipolar disorder or not. I wrote it in 4 days, put it in an envelope, mailed it to my agent, and I heard back shortly from him. He said, "It's a good book, but the typos in it are so bad, I am not sending this thing out." So I had to retype all of it. And as I did that, and as I went through this book, I don't make outlines. I don't make notes. The story starts, and most of the books I wrote in 10 working days, 20 pages a day, 10 days, roughly that. And all of them are first drafts. There have been some slight edits here and there, but they just come out. I don't know why. I have writer friends who make these elaborate outlines, and then they do diagrams of the characters in different colored inks and where they go. I can't do that. I just sit down and write the sucker. I wanted to do several things with these books. Montana has been at the center of my life for most of it. I love it here. I was never happy anyplace else, never felt right anyplace else. And it has such a wonderful history. I grew up in Bozeman. My family moved there when I was 10, and we lived about a block and a half from a historian named Merrill Burlingame, who I was a thoroughgoing pest to. Wonderful man. And he, when I was 10 years old, my mother took me to his first lecture to the community, which was, an evening history of Montana. He got up on the stage and he looked out and he said, all of the fabulous characters that you read about, Buffalo Bill, Wild Bill Hickok, Howdy Jane, they were all right here and not very long ago. Montana's very new. It's been changing very radically. It seems to be turning into a very large resort community. And, the old cattle and timber and mining industries are still there, but they're shrinking. These books, with Du Pré, who I followed along through them, and the other characters who came up, I can see them in my mind. I can see the people. I can see where they are, how they're dressed, what they're doing, where they live looks like, what their house looks like, what their car looks like. And that I really can't explain either. Now, Christine was going to read also from the 15th Solus. That Solus is the 15th of the Du Prés. The 16th Raven will come out next year, and that's it. I got no more to say. It's Du Pré. So she'll read from that, and then I'll take your questions, if any.
So this is the beginning of Solus. Du Pré looked at the young doctor who was looking at a file on his computer screen. It was Du Pré's file. I like paper, ink, thought Du Pré. Computers, shit. It looks very good, Mr. Du Pré, said the young doctor. Looks like he's about 15, thought Du Pré. It was malignant, but it's a slow-growing carcinoma, fairly common and easily removed. There were no cells in the margins that were occult, said the young doctor. That does it, thought Du Pré. They sacrifice chickens here, read the guts, occult. Du Pré stood up. Thank you, he said. You're very welcome, said the young doctor. The name on his plastic tag was Gauche. Du Pré left the office, walked down the hall, his boots squeaking on the polished green linoleum tiles. Madeline was sitting in Du Pré's old Crown Victoria, beating a small medicine pouch. I don't go in those places, Du Pré, she had said. I find myself in one of those places I was carried there unconscious. Du Pré got up. You are dying, said Madeline. The tip of her tongue was stuck in the left corner of her mouth. She was looking at the bead she was setting. I got a week, maybe, said Du Pré. They did everything they could. Start the fucking car, said Madeline. Anybody stays in Billings 10 minutes longer than they have to will not last very long. As soon as they left the fog of refinery stink, Billings sank behind the hills. Du Pré reached under the seat, took out a bottle of whiskey, had a good pull, rolled a smoke, lit it, handed it to Madeline for the one puff she took from time to time. I'm glad you are all right, said Madeline. You would be very hard to replace. Not impossible, no, but probably pretty hard. So I'm very glad you've not got some terrible disease. Thank you, said Du Pré. It is the people who love you who pull you through these terrible times. Their prayers and shit. Fuck, said Madeline, looking at the bright bead of blood on her fingertip. I know better than this beating while you were driving. No, said Du Pré, you don't. Obviously you don't know better. Do not get blood in my car seats. Du Pré's cruiser was over 20 years old, had 4 doors from 4 different cars, all blue and none matching, and the seat upholstery looked like it had been attacked by starving badgers, certain there was a nice fat gopher in it somewhere. "Yeah," said Madeline, mopping the blood from her fingertip on a scrap of upholstery. "Now I will get gangrene. Bart has all these nice new cars, more'n he needs. He would give you one." "I don't want a new car," said Du Pré. "What's that smell?" said Madeline. "Rubber or burning goat shit? Something we're on fire?" "It was just a carcinoma," said Du Pré. "Not much." Madeline laughed. "You always get that look. You find a doctor who's too young," she said. "You want them old, like Bennettsy, have a white lab coat, be about 120. You're getting old, Du Pré." "He looks about 15, said Du Pré. "Oh, Du Pré is so much better," said Madeline. "Last time he's saying, bitching, that the doctor is 12. I should demand ID. That is Du Pré." "This one was maybe 15, said Du Pré. "And you go to court, pay the speeding ticket a month ago?" said Madeline. Du Pré laughed. "You come back, say you go early, see what the offer is. There's this pretty blonde child, should be out selling Girl Scout cookies, but she's an assistant district attorney," said Madeline. "Old goat, you should go up in the mountains, live in a cave." "No," said Du Pré, "they're damp." He had another pull at the whiskey. An ambulance went past in the other lane, heading toward Billings. A few miles farther on, there was a clutch of emergency vehicles and a fire truck and 2 highway patrol cars, lights flashing. A big sedan was upside down on top of a fence. A pickup truck was a blackened hull, smoke coming out a little. Madeline crossed herself and her lips moved. Du Pré rolled another smoke. They got to the road north and they turned off. Now it was 2 lanes all the way home. The sun was still high. There would be daylight. A low mountain range came into view to the west, a smoky lavender and dark gray on the horizon. Du Pré got up to speed. 110, a Montanan's answer to a hell of a lot of not much. Du Pré slowed when he came to the tops of hills. You never knew when a rancher with a tractor and a big load of hay would be moving at 20 miles an hour just out of sight. Or some dumb cow would have gotten through the fence and be standing ready to crush the radiator, and at the speeds Du Pré drove, intimately commingle all of its flesh with the car. Du Pré looked out the window, saw a big yellow-gray coyote trot to the hilltop, pause, and look back. The coyote would drop out of sight if the car slowed down. Du Pré slowed more at the crest and came up the flat, and the coyote vanished. "Palace is bad," said Madeline. "Where is that old bastard Bennettsy? We need him now. He pisses me off. He always shows up when we need him, but he has not done that. He's dead, maybe?" "No," said Du Pré. "He will be back." "Before she kills herself, maybe," said Madeline. Du Pré patted Madeline on the leg. "She is strong," said Du Pré. "She rides and rides until she can sleep." "So smart," said Madeline. "And now this." Du Pré nodded. Pallas had come back from school, her eyes deep in her head, her skin pale, listless, hardly able to eat. She was proud and would not complain, but she was in great pain. "Bart wants her to go to a hospital," said Du Pré. "They are not worth a shit," said Madeline. "Bennettsy is, though." Du Pré sighed, nodded, had some more whiskey. Madeline fished a bottle of the pink fizzy wine she liked from the soft cooler in the back seat, and she poured a travel mug full. The sweet smell filled the car. Du Pré had a good 15 miles of clear road ahead. He got back up to speed. They shot past a parked highway patrol car that was hidden in the cleft of the land behind some flat rocks. Du Pré honked. The patrol car flashed its lights. "That is McPhee," said Du Pré. "I know it is McPhee," said Madeline. "They send other cops to do McPhee's job, and they stop all the people driving fast, and they piss off people, so then somebody gets the drop of them, locks them in the trunk, calls the highway patrol, says, "Get this asshole out of here before we shoot him." And then we have McPhee back. Du Pré laughed. "Nobody's going to shoot a cop," said Du Pré. "Maybe," said Madeline, "but it helps when they think somebody might." Du Pré grinned. McPhee was a huge man, had played pro football for a while until injuries slowed him down. He was from here, the plains, and he knew the people. Proud, not fond of government, and extremely pugnacious. Very good soldiers came from here. "We've got to do something for Palace," said Madeline. "Yes," said Du Pré. "You hear me, Du Pré?" said Madeline. "Yes," said Du Pré. "Okay," said Madeline.
Thank you very much.
Raise your mic, will you, Peter? There you go.
Perfect.
Like that?
Yes.
Is that better? Okay. We had, of course, a short reading program tonight, but I'm quite willing to answer any questions if anybody has any. Yes?
How did you come to set your stories among the Métis?
Oh, when I was small, my mother did Episcopalian Lady Good Works. And she had grown up in Pierce, South Dakota. And I ended up, when I was very, very young, there was a small Indian reservation near Pierre, now vanished. It's under the waters of Oahe Dams. But I went down there with her, and there were people there speaking English. I was 4 or 5. But they were speaking English in this beautiful musical rhythm. There was music in the words. And I listened to it, and I could make out what they were saying. But it was like a language on top of another language, on top of a symphony. And those were Métis people. You find them on all the reservations in the Plains area. They're the Red River breeds, mixed breeds, children of the fur trade. And there's a hell of a lot of them. And they have a really wonderful, romantic, tragic story, which nobody much knew. And then my family, my father taught at Montana State for 8 years, and my mother was very interested in the history of Montana. We had a good library. I read Joseph Kinsey's Howard's wonderful account of the Métis rebellions, Strange Empire, when the Métis revolted against the English, against the Canadians. They did it twice. And I just got fascinated with these people. They have a great musical tradition, and they play, Métis fiddlers are very, very famous, and they play a particular type of piano that is just jackhammer piano. God, did they beat on that poor piano for dances and so forth. I just found them fascinating people. And as I grew older, I had friends on the reservation near Pierre, which was quite close by, and I saw them frequently. And there were Brûlé Sooth there too, and they were also friends of mine. I just thought it was a great story, and if I had a Métis character, Du Pré, thinking about his people and the past, the Basques were probably in the Gulf of St. Lawrence by about 1200 AD. They invented the windlass rudder. If you see a sailing ship and they're spinning the wheel, it's a rope that goes down through pulleys and around a post, and it gives you a great mechanical advantage. So the Basques invented that, and they could sail into the wind then. And they were making it across the Western Ocean, finding lots of lovely cod, and drying and flaking it and taking it back to Spain, and saying, "Oh yeah, we got it right off Bilbao, right out there." And they did that for a very long time. When the Lewis and Clark expedition went from Montana finally over the Low Pass and then Clearwater to the Snake, and not the Snake, the Columbia. They were following a map that was sketched out by a Metis trapper they met on the way. They'd been all over. When Champlain came up the St. Lawrence, they saw a couple Indians over on the shore. He and his interpreter paddled over there and said, well, how's it going? And one of the Indians said in Basque, the priests have it better. So they've been here for a very long time, long before Columbus. And I just thought it was a fascinating story that not very many people knew. And so there I was.
I have a question. First of all, hi Peter, Marianne back here.
Yes, yes.
And can Christine read all of our books from now on? And you bastard, you finished another book?
Yeah. Are you ever going to finish Billie Jean?
You put us all to shame. When did you write this book? And is it finished already?
Well, I wrote it, I think in the
3 days ago?
fall of
The last book.
the last book, I mean, Solus. I wrote this 13 years ago.
Okay.
I was living out on Deep Creek. I had this, and I had Bitter Creek, which was the last year's book. I got into a big fight with my publisher, then the economy collapsed, and it was some time before my agent could find another home for the Du Pré books, which he did. But yeah, the Bitter Creek didn't come out until 12 years after it was written. And the final one, Raven, I wrote a couple years ago. So.
Look forward to it.
I'm sorry?
Look forward to the next one.
Oh, thank you.
Peter, it's interesting that that Solus opens with a reference to a computer, and I'm curious how many years in Du Pré's life go by in the whole series,
Oh. I don't
and
think that-
what changes that
Yeah,
Montana has seen.
He's fighting a desperate rearguard action against modernity. And I didn't get a computer until about 10 years ago. I worked on an IBM Selectric, but the books aren't actually necessarily in any particular order. And if you try to line out the characters or the children by age, you'll get hopelessly confused.
Good.
And my thought about it was, well, if anybody's that peck sniffy, they can just get all tangled up and I won't help them. So, yes, evil sense of humor. I just would have a story that would occur to me and I'd sit down and write it. Where they fit, I don't know. So far, I have escaped the attentions of English professors. I mean, there was a near miss when some poor son of a bitch in Pennsylvania wrote me wanting to do his doctoral dissertation on the Yellowstone Kelly books. And I was living back in the weeds over on the western part of the state, and the humanities committee person who had called me said, "What do I tell him?" I said, "Tell him that I'm dead." Never heard anything again. It was very sad.
Peter, I'm curious, when you were writing some of these fun events, do you laugh out loud?
No?
Maybe I should ask your wife.
Yeah, no. But, I just am sitting there banging away, and it's appearing on the pages. I have no idea really where my writing comes from. If you ask me, I don't know. It just comes out.
So I
Yes?
just follow my brother up there. Any role models for your fabulous characters? Are any
Role
of us in there, Peter?
Oh, well, no, they're, you know, the people that you meet in your life are the ones who teach you about people. And these are, you know, I was not going to write about and have characters that were extremely close to real people, because I don't think it's fair. Some writers do that as, you know, use it for vengeance, but I know I didn't want anybody's feelings hurt writing about them. And I don't think anybody could read one of my books and figure it was them. I suppose there are people that do. But, yes? I can't see real well. I thought I saw emotion.
Yeah, you had said you might talk a little bit about some of the stories that are coming in First Light.
Oh, okay. I worked now on a novel about growing up in Bozeman. And my life before that. My family moved to Bozeman from Colorado when I was 10. And they stayed there till I was 18, and then everybody went on. But I had a wonderful time there. As I mentioned, the Brule Sioux reservation near South Dakota, I had a friend there who was an older man who took me hunting mouse beans. That's how we met. He just put out his hand and I took it. I'm 4 years old, I think. We went down by the river and hunted mouse beans, which were little tiny white beans that ordinary mice gather and stock in their nests. And he would find them and take them and put in corn in exchange. And they used these tiny beans to make a soup, which I thought was a very ordinary bean soup when I finally had it. But like that, and Bozeman was very new. When we moved there, Montana had been a state 66 years. And I had a paper route for a while. And the last place that I stopped was a bar called the Oaks, which is now gone. And in the front of the Oaks, there was a big round table in a kind of a bay window with 8 or 10 old cowboys around it. They were very old. They were men in their 80s and some in their 90s. Some of them had, as young men, ridden up from Texas with the first cattle drives. And so I sat there listening to these lying old bastards and going across the street for sacks of tobacco and so forth and so on. Montana has stories, and you get the most amazing stories if you listen carefully. One of my great friends in Bozeman was a wonderful painter named Neil Parsons, who put together the Plains Indian Museum in Browning. I'm going to tell you a Montana story now, just so you know how my mind works. I hadn't seen him in many years, and I ran into him. He was in a restaurant, and he had his right leg in a cast, and his right arm, and he was on crutches, and I said, what happened? And he had a friend named Junior, who was a really good friend, huge guy. And when Neil would come back from wherever he was, teaching someplace or something like that, he and Junior, they were both Blackfeet, would get a bunch of lousy pop and worse whiskey. And they would drink the pop and the whiskey going to the Sun Highway at vast speed and hope that they lived. And he said that they had been doing this. And Junior's reactions weren't as good as they were, so they went through Apgar on the roof of the car and into the barrel pit. And Junior had one response to bad stuff like that. It was his uncle's car. So he went to sleep. He's a narcoleptic. They're upside down, the engine's running. Neil can smell gas. His leg is broken from a skiing accident. And he shakes Junior awake and says, Junior, we gotta get out of here. Oh, sure, Neil. So Junior rips the car open and walks up the side of the barrel pit, and the guy in the bar across the way knows Junior perfectly well. And he ain't having it, so he stands on a chair by the door with a sap. And Junior walks in and he goes, wham! And Junior goes, you hit me. picks him up by the crotch and the throat, throws him through the front window of the bar, walks back across the road, walks down into the barrel pit, crawls into the car and says, "They won't help us, Neil." And I've been hearing things like that all my life.